Well, let me now also bring on board Mr. Rajiv Rajgopal, Managing Director with Akzo Nobel, to talk about what is happening in his industry. I mean, to be frank, this is one sector which has not surprised, but has mesmerized everyone. I mean, who would have thought that in the pandemic, people would paint houses or would buy new houses? But look at the industry, it's growing. Pricing power is there. Even though commodity prices have been on some kind of an uptick, companies or paint companies have been able to pass on the price hike. Good morning, Rajiv. Always a pleasure to have you on ET now. Let me give you options on what you want to start with. We can talk about the competition which is intensifying in your sector with the entry of JSW and Grasim. We can talk about how raw material prices are creating a havoc, or we can start with a simple question on demand scenario. Why don't you choose? And I'll frame my question after that.
Good morning, Nikunj. Good morning to you and all the viewers. Nikunj, my pleasure. You can decide which is the priority order. I'm happy to discuss any of the three. If you would like, we can start on the demand side and then follow it up with the other two.
Let's do that. The demand has surprised everybody. I'm using the word mesmerized, and I'm not wrong when I'm using the word mesmerized, because demand has been that strong. Are happy days here to stay? Do you think 2021 will be another year of outstanding growth for you and for your sector?
So you're right. I'm very careful of using expletives, Nikunj. But yes, I think the industry has performed very well. And I must compliment some of the players of the industry. I think pretty strong double-digit growths. We had a high single-digit growth with some parts of our business getting into double-digit in the last quarter. We see that trend continuing. But yes, I do see that I think double-digit growth is going to sort of continue for this year. Now, the extent in terms of percentages, etc., one can discuss, and I think there are drivers to it. Whether you look at from on the paint side of the business, whether the consumption, particularly in the rural markets, particularly tier 2, 3, 4, accelerating. Also, second, with now the pandemic sort of coming down in terms of numbers dramatically, we are seeing the opening up of the large towns and the metros where we are represented pretty well. So I do see that the industry should see high double-digit growths. However, there are a couple of things which are outside your sphere of control. One is, of course, the second part, which you sort of questioned that you alluded to, which is the raw material prices steeply escalating. Those are areas that one needs to do it. The fundamentals of the paints business continues to remain buoyant and strong. Yeah, and I see the good part of it is it's coming across. So it is fairly uniform across the portfolio. We are also seeing some good uptick now in the premium side, etc. So I think that's really what it is. I also want to allude to, Nikunj, my last interview with you where we talked of quality. And I'm delighted to inform you that, we launched on February 14, Valentine's Day, a gift for consumers, a program called Dulux Assurance. Basically to say that for any consumers who use our brand on any of our premium brands, if you don't like the color, perfect color, if you don't see a perfect color, you don't see the finish, uniform finish, or you don't see the stated coverage, we replace it with paint free. One of the reasons we could do that and we could take the brand to that level is because we are very confident of the quality of product that we do. Yeah. And so I just wanted to sort of first close out that, because that was a sort of literally a goal that you had sort of left in my mind. And I think there was no better way than to come back to consumers with a very strong proposition through a Dulux Assurance. Yeah, early days, but I do think that will add velocity to the growth as far as we are concerned. On the coating side of the business, Nikunj, I think it's a mixed. Auto has come back, so we are seeing some good traction in our vehicle refinish and automotive business. We are still seeing some headwinds in our protective coatings. The oil and gas and infrastructure has started to sort of grow, but these are green shoots. I would still think that we are a couple of quarters. So I do think that by the second quarter of the fiscal is when I'll start seeing a double-digit growth back in those sectors. So overall, to answer your question, I do see the demand is good. I do see a stronger recovery coming through. Now, this, obviously, how each player does is a function of the intense competition that has got unleashed in the market. And you're aware that, with all the new players coming in, I do see that going to be sort of staying in for a bit of a time.
Okay, now the entry of Grasim, it's a company which is backed by the Aditya Birla Group. I'm saying it for the benefit of our viewers so that they can relate to it. Do you see responsible competition, or there could be a fight for market share? I'll tell you what will worry markets, when I say market, stock markets and your shareholders. Could there be a Reliance Jio kind of a fight? Because paint stocks are trading at a strong premium. This market is growing and everybody would want to eat into the market share of Asian Paints, yours, and even Berger.
Good question. So firstly, yes, a respected company. I've I know a lot of people there. I know the they're going to put a lot of might behind it. But let's again come back to the core drivers of a paint business and, focus on the paints, because as far as I know, they are still sort of toying with the idea of the paint business. That's where they've committed the Capex and all the announcements to, not the coatings or the industrial side of the business, which is a little more complex in sort of creating and crafting. On the paint side of the business, my view, the drivers are very clearly first brand, second distribution. You've got tinting machines which need to be placed in the outlet because India is not really a ready mix market. It's really moved to tinting. Yeah, and obviously the quality of execution and the quality of supply chain that you sort of have. Now, if you look at the market leaders, and Nikunj, if you take a 20-year period, and I'm not talking about a 5, 3, 4-year period. I've heard some of the industry players already alluding to it. The fact is the industry has really not changed. I mean, the market shares may have moved up by a point or two, but dramatically nothing fundamentally has changed with many other players coming in. We had a host of both multinationals coming in. AkzoNobel too acquired ICI, and if you really look at our endeavor, while we did have some quarters where we did very well, we didn't do well in a couple of quarters. Overall, if you look at the market positions of the top 4 players, have by and large remained the same. Yeah, I think you're right. I think what will get stressed a bit is the industry profitability. But again, when you look at paints as a market and you look at the market leader with almost a 50% plus market share has a profitability. And when I say profitability, I mean EBIT margins of close to 18 to 20%. Now, that's not very high. If you look at global markets, market leaders in markets, if you look at US, UK, for anybody above 35% market share, your EBIT margins are hovering around 25 to 35. Now, then that makes it even more attractive to enter for a new player. So I think one will have to really look at it. One will have to understand what are the drivers. There are players who've been very strong in certain categories adjacent to paints who've tried to enter the space. It's not been an easy journey. Creating a brand, creating a distribution network takes time. That said, it's a formidable player. People like us are obviously, going to keep that in, make sure that we keep it in line of sight. But over a period of time, I think we will also make sure that we are sort of focusing on our innovation, building our strengths to make sure that we are ready and prepared for the fight.
A question, Rajiv, which we are perhaps alluding to, me, Aisha, Bhavan, and my rest of our team members, is that are we at a beginning of a new cycle in the housing market, and more importantly, in the home improvement market? Interest rates are low, property affordability has gone higher. You are managed to grow in a year where demand was slightly subdued. 6 months were lost almost because of COVID. If we are staring at a new cycle of real estate demand and home improvement, then are we in for extraordinary growth and extraordinary returns? Do you see this kind of a blue sky scenario? I'm speaking the management language. Normally managements and managers, they speak like in a boardroom, but that's the sense I'm getting when I do a channel check. So I'm speaking perhaps on your behalf.
So, Nikul, that's one of the reasons why I love to interview with ET now and all of you, because you somehow seem to know the language that we speak. And the answer is yes. I personally, and this is my personal opinion when I'm looking at all the individual drivers of what drives real estate, I think that we are at the beginning of what could be, at least for a couple of years, and I'm talking of fiscal starting, April 2021 to 23, right? I do think that there is going to be a lot of buoyancy. I do see real estate seeing early signs of a bounce back. I see younger people, look, 65-70% of the people are below 30 years of age, and most people get their first jobs between 22, 25. I think my generation grew up either staying with your parents, or particularly when I started my career, I was never in the same city. So you ended up staying either in a rental apartment or something. But I do see today's youth far more driven to being far more prudent on the financials. And channels like yours have also helped to build that literacy levels of saying, why don't you own a home when you are young? So I do see that as a trigger. I do see that people, youngsters, wanting to make that choice, wanting to buy a home and uptrade as they start progressing in their professional careers. So I do see that, if you ask me, that around Diwali this year, and you can hold me to it at a later point of time, I do see that there will be a huge uptick in the real estate sector. That's what I'm sensing. That's what, when I travel, when I speak to people, I'm getting in. And the good thing is, what I really thought is it's going to come from smaller towns. If you really start looking at it, the rate may be higher in smaller towns, but I do see, because of jobs still being in some of the larger towns, I do see that there will be again a uniform growth. So it will be fairly secular in terms of representation of where the growth is coming. And I do see that people will start investing. I think one of the challenge of people was, to buy the unsold inventory was primarily to do with the money question, that is my money safe? But with now, the RERA coming in with a lot of, aggressive policies, which gives a lot of peace of mind to buyers. And I see a lot of the top companies really now unleashing the projects with a little more secure sort of peace of mind for a consumer. I do see this as a driver going forward. So you're right, this is going to be one of the impetus, and then it depends on how the speed of growth is going to happen for the building materials and paint companies to sort of grow accordingly.
Sure. Raji, you're clearly defined the move towards urban, the kind of inventory across real estate as well. What about the industrial segment? What do you anticipate there? We did see we saw a hit earlier on protective coating, of course, which is used across several industries, oil and gas, power, etc. But what about going forward?
So in my view, I think the business will start getting into good growths by around the second quarter, anywhere between August, September to October. The reason, if you look at, what is negative for all of us, and the paint part of the business, which is the larger part of the business that I look after, is the price of crude oil and the price of oil. So I think that's a boon for the protective business, because what happens is the refineries, the players tend to invest when the prices go up, because that's when their profitability shore up, and they start investing more in terms of protective. Now remember, protective, by virtue of the sort of products we deal with, we are talking of things like fire retardant, where we provide the best-in-class solutions. You're also talking of infrastructure. So when you see more of the airports, railways all coming in, I do see that uptick. Now, why? My own belief is based on two factors. One, a lot of state elections are due. The announcements have happened. It's happening between end of March to the results coming in May. So my belief is, you would see a lot more, because this is not just about the central government, it's also about the state governments executing it. And it takes a bit of time, then 3 months, 4 months to sort of come in. I also look at the order book of all the companies. So if you take the largest infrastructure company, say a company like L&T Infrastructure, if you look at the order book, it's fantastic. But the execution, it's taking a bit of time. And I personally believe that by around August, September is when you will start seeing the tick up. So again, I personally believe towards the end of the year, we'd see it. We also serve, infrastructure, oil and gas, and also the wind sort of segment. So yeah, I do see around the, October, around Diwali this year, even for that business coming back to pretty strong growths.
Great. Rajiv, we leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us on the show today. Good chatting with you, as always.